Please help me welcome Dr. Neal Barnard.
Hello. Thank you for being here. Congratulations to all my friends here for putting on this conference again. What a wonderful thing. Have you had a good day?
Yes.
Well, I want to talk about something that most people never thought about at all, at least I never did, and that's hormones. That hormones affect so many aspects of our lives, and they can be controlled by what we eat. So who would have thunk it? So anyway, let's get started. This is Robin. She called me up one day. I was just sitting at my desk, and my phone rang, and she said, "I can't get out of bed." I said, "What do you mean? What's the problem?" About one day every month, my cramps are so terrible that I'm just taking ibuprofen, and I've got a business trip the next day. I can't function. Could you give me some painkillers? Now, a lot of women have cramps, but for maybe 1 in 10, they are off the scale, terrible, bad. And so I said, sure, I'll give you painkillers for a couple days. But I thought, how do we stop this from happening next month and the month after that? And I suggested something that I don't think any doctor ever suggested to a menstrual pain patient before, which I said, let's try an experiment. Would you like to try this with me? No animal products for the next month, and keep oils really very low. She said, okay, I'll try it. And she did, and she called me a month later, and she said, this is amazing. I got my period, but no symptoms at all. And the next month, and the next month, and the next month, she was like totally cured. Now, where did I come up with this? Oh, by the way, here she is. This is what she explained to me. This is the uterus, and that lining inside the uterus, that's the endometrial layer. In anticipation of pregnancy, every month that lining thickens up. And if you have more estrogen in your blood, the female sex hormone, it thickens up more and it causes more pain at the end of the month. What happens is at the time of menstruation, that endometrial layer releases these maladjusted chemicals called prostaglandins that cause pain, and they go into your brain and make you feel rotten, and they're just terrible things. So what I was thinking is she had too much estrogen in her blood, and if she went on a low-fat vegan diet, she could reduce the amount of estrogen and not have pain, and that's what happened. So here's what we're talking about. This is the amount of estrogen in a woman's blood during her reproductive years. And at the beginning of the month, as you can see, there's very little estrogen in her blood. But it rises over 2 weeks, and then it falls. She's ovulating. The ovary is releasing an egg. And then over the next week, the amount of estrogen rises again, and that's because the uterus is the most optimistic organ in the body. Every month, it's convinced this could be the big one. But these are just average pain figures. On the first day, they rated their pain as a 7 before they did the diet. And it went down to a 5 on the second day, and then about a 3 on the third day. And on the diet, it was a 6 on the first day, down to about a 3, and then gone. So it was somehow shortening the pain, reducing the intensity of it. So what we were realizing is that menstrual cramps don't kill you. But if the estrogens that cause them can be manipulated, then everything else in your body that depends on estrogens can also be changed based on what you had for breakfast and lunch. And I have to tell you, in the course of the study, we asked all the participants to not use any hormone medications in this study, because we're studying the effect of food on hormones. If they're taking a medication that's a hormone, that's no good. So we asked them if they were using birth control pills to use some other kind of contraceptive method. Now, there was one of the women in the study who said, don't worry about me. We don't use any kind of contraception. She and her husband had given up having a baby years earlier. They had both been evaluated, and she said, it's not him, it's me, I don't ovulate. The second month that she was in the research study, and she was on the vegan diet, she came in and she said, Dr. Barnard, I'm pregnant! And A few years later, I ran into her, and she had moved to another city, and I was giving a lecture, and she came with her 3 kids. So, anyhow, okay, all right. So we're talking about cramps. We're talking about fertility. And by the way, what's this about? Let me walk you through one contributor here. As you know, cheese comes from milk. Milk comes from a cow. Cows are pregnant. Did you know this? It's kind of creepy. Let me just walk you through this. Cows don't give milk. No animal gives milk. People take it. And the way this works is that a cow can only give milk if she's been pregnant and given birth. That's the way the biology works. So the farmhand takes a glove and puts it over his left hand all the way up to his shoulder and inserts his, I'm just telling you the facts, inserts his hand into the cow's rectum up to his elbow, and through that you can feel the uterus through the rectal wall, and you stabilize it with your left hand. Then you take your right hand and you take what looks like a knitting needle and you jam it through the cervix and you inject semen that you took from a bull. None of these animals are volunteers, but she is chained by the neck, and whether she wants to or not, and she obviously doesn't, she will be impregnated that day. You write the date on her flank, and she will give birth then. And after she gives birth, you take a wheelbarrow and take the baby away, and despite the fact that she will cry out, as you heard from Barbara, human beings did not invent the mother-infant bond. And the baby will cry out, except that if he's a he will soon not be able to cry because he's going to be in the veal case. If she, the daughter, will be in a crate until she's old enough to be impregnated herself. And at about age 4, cows normally live to 20, roughly about 20, but on dairies, after age 4, they don't produce enough milk to keep them alive, to keep them worthwhile. So they are sent and hung up by the leg, and they become low-grade hamburger. So am I cheering you up for this? Anyway, here's the point for this, is that every glass of milk you ever had came from a cow. In most cases, those cows are pregnant. Pregnant animals make hormones, and the hormones get into the milk. They're concentrated in the cheese. So here's estradiol, which is an exact match for your estradiol coming out of the cow, getting into the milk. There's the amount in the milk. The further the pregnancy goes along, the more there is. So actually, some farms have said, we don't inject hormones into our cows. We want to label our milk hormone-free. The Food and Drug Administration refuses to let them do it. They say, you may not inject hormones, but the cow is making hormones because you impregnated her, and there's no hormone-free milk. So if you have a 6-year-old child, and you are having the child drink milk, the child is drinking estradiol. Okay? Creepy, isn't it? So when milk is turned into cheese, the hormones are concentrated in the cheese. And this affects not just women, but men. Researchers started looking at male infertility. They went into Rochester, New York, they went into a fertility clinic, and they looked at men who consumed not too much cheese, a half a serving a day, and those who ate more cheese, 1 or more servings a day. And the more cheese men ate, the lower their sperm counts. You with me? Hank is dosing himself with female hormones day after day after day after day, and his sperm count falls. And sperm morphology, that's the shape or motility, that means, do they go in the right way? All these things are disturbed by dosing yourselves with female hormones day after day. Okay? So what's worse is not so much fertility, but do you live or not? And researchers in California looked at women, women who had previously been diagnosed with breast cancer. And those who consumed the most cheese and other high-fat dairy products had a 49% higher likelihood of dying of their cancer compared to women who generally avoided these things. So it's really true that it's only traces of estrogens in cheese. It's not very much. But the average man or woman in the United States consumes about 35 pounds of it every year, plus milk, plus ice cream, plus yogurt, plus the dairy products that are baked into cookies and so forth. You're getting dosed with estrogens throughout the day. And you already have in your body the whole amount that nature thought you should have. And now all this is waiting around is to do extra mischief, okay? So this is Catherine. Catherine grew up in Louisiana, and she was an Air Force aerospace engineer, and she went into Iraq. in 2003. Because her job with the military was to set up the Army or the Air Force bases. And when you're in a war zone and you're working really hard and you're eating what the government gives you, you don't gain weight. But as time went on, she reached the end of her tour of duty, and the Air Force sent her home. And when she got off the plane, her friends said, "Catherine, what did you miss when you were in Iraq?" She said, "You know what I really missed the most? You know what we never had over there? Cheese. Cheese, macaroni and cheese snacks. That's what I really missed." And so she started tucking into cheese. She would go out to cheese restaurants and have queso and so forth. And for her birthday, a friend of hers gave her an entire case of 48 packs of macaroni and cheese, which she ate every day for 48 days straight. And she started to gain some weight, as you might guess. But she also developed some unusual symptoms. She started to get pain in her abdomen. And it got especially bad during her period, but then it never really went away. And she had one test after another, and she tried painkillers, and finally a doctor said, "We got to do a laparoscopy." That's where you make a little incision below the belly button, and you put a tube in, and you look. And the doctor looked around, sewed her up, sent her to the recovery room, and wrote in her chart, endometriosis. Endometriosis means that the cells that are supposed to be lining the uterus, they've escaped. They've swum up the fallopian tubes, and they're now implanting. They can implant on your intestines. They can implant all around the abdomen. They can actually strangle the fallopian tube itself, leading to infertility. So it hurts. And the doctor prescribed her painkillers. They didn't really work. The doctor prescribed hormone treatments, which sometimes help, sometimes don't. Nothing was helping her. So the doctor said, "Look, you're probably infertile anyway. And the way I can take your pain away is to remove your uterus. We're going to do a hysterectomy." She thought about this, said, she and her husband hadn't started a family yet, but she could not live with this pain, and she scheduled the procedure. But as fate would have it, the surgeon couldn't do the procedure for about 6 weeks' time. And during that time, she met with a nutritionist who said, wait a minute, wait. How much dairy do you eat? Do you eat meat? Stop doing all that stuff. I'm going to put you on a completely plant-based diet. We're going to keep the oils really low. Exactly what we were doing for the menstrual pain patients. And she started to feel better. And she's feeling better and better and better. But the day for the surgery came, and she thought, all right, I'll just do it. She went and had the surgery. The doctor put in the laparoscope. Again, you can pull the uterus out through this little incision. And the doctor looked around, looked some more, looked a little bit more, and he sewed her up and sent her to the recovery room. And an hour later, when she came out of anesthesia, he said to her, "I didn't do it. I didn't do the hysterectomy. Your endometriosis has disappeared." And her mother said, "She's been vegan for like 6 weeks. It's amazing. She's so much better." The doctor said, "Oh, come on. Please. Food has nothing to do with endometriosis, and a diet change is never going to cure this condition. There's only one possible explanation. This has got to be a miracle." So that's written in her chart that she had a miracle. Anyway, so she never had the procedure. She has 3 kids now. And in fact, she joined the physician's committee to be one of our Food for Life instructors. She works in Dallas. She has a whole center there to help other women to take back their health and control of their lives. Okay, so while we're beating up on dairy, there's one other thing I want to share with you. Okay, lactose. The main nutrient in milk is not protein, it's not fat, it's actually sugar. Did you know that? All the people beating up on Coca-Cola ought to take a look at milk. The main nutrient in it is lactose, sugar. And lactose is a sneaky sugar. It breaks apart to release what are called galactose and glucose. The reason I'm telling you this is there very, very few foods have this sugar called galactose in them. But milk is the motherlode of it. And it turns out that galactose can attack your ovaries. What's this about? Well, here's what it is. Dan Kramer at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston started looking at infertility, and what he was specifically looking at is, you've heard this, that say if a woman is 22, 23, Her fertility is pretty high, but she thinks, wait a minute, I'm starting my career. This is maybe not the best time for me to raise my family. But then she reaches 26, 28, 30. Her mother says, you know, you better have a baby soon because your fertility is dropping. And once she hits about 36, 37, 38, her fertility is lower. You know, my biological clock, all that kind of stuff. So Daniel Kramer said, wait, let's look at different countries. And he looked at Thailand. In Thailand, the drop in fertility between a woman's late 20s and her late 30s, the drop is maybe 25%, something like that. Did you eat ice cream in Thailand? Is it a big dairy country? No, it's not part of the tradition until quite recently. And then he looked at Brazil, where there is more use of cheese, and there the drop in fertility was about 50%. In the United States, where women are all told to consume milk all the time, the drop in fertility is 80% during that time. So he then started putting all different countries on this graph, and it's not perfect, but you can see, generally speaking, the more milk women drink, the faster they lose their fertility. And so Kramer said, okay, estrogens maybe. Galactose is toxic to the ovary, and part of the reason we know that is because this is a study from Sweden. Women consuming the most milk have the most ovarian cancer. It's this funny sugar that nature thought would only be used during the very few months of nursing, and that nobody would ever be exposed to it, ever. But human beings being so restless and creative, we figured out how to never get weaned. And so you can be exposed to these poisons all your life. Okay? All right, now for extra credit, I want to show you part of why a vegan diet helps. Your liver cares about you. You know, we should have National Liver Day. It's amazing, we really should. You know, we give cards to our parents, but your liver loves you like nobody else. Every day it tries to remove estrogens and take them out of the blood and send them into your intestinal tract. Here it goes. There's the liver, that big red thing, and the green thing is the bile duct, and that's taking the estrogens that are going into the intestine, and they literally are flushed down the toilet. However, this all requires fiber from beans or vegetables or fruits. The estrogens attach to the fiber, and the fiber escorts them out with the waste. But for lunch, I had salmon. Salmon is a plant? It's an animal. Does it have fiber? No, fiber is only in plants. And I had chicken breast, and I had yogurt, and I had Velveeta. These are not plants, they don't have fiber. If you don't have fiber in your intestinal tract, you know what happens? The liver filters the blood, it pulls the estrogens out, they go into the intestine, and since there's no fiber there, they reabsorb back through the intestinal wall into the bloodstream. And so a woman who is eating animal products and doesn't have adequate fiber has estrogens cycling in her body that she wouldn't otherwise have. Men too, same thing, okay? So, here's the quiz. Spam, is it a plant or an animal? You want to get rid of it? Okay, there it goes, sorry. Okay, KFC, oh, sorry, that's gone, okay. Cheetos, sorry, they're gone too because the fiber was taken away. All right, so we talked about cramps and infertility and endometriosis and even infertility in men, but what can really kill you is breast cancer. Estrogens can cause cancer. What? How can that be? Estrogens are part of your body. They're a natural part of female biology and for men too. But estrogens are sneaky. These little pink dots, that's estrogen. They can go through the cell, that's a breast cell. They go through the cell. They then go right through the nucleus. And they can attach to your DNA, and they can damage it, and they can cause that cell, that breast cell, to become a cancer cell. Let me be clear what I'm saying. If you have extra estrogen in your blood, it goes into the breast cells and it can cause them to transform into cancer cells. So you want to have a little bit of estrogen, you don't want to have too much. This was a combination of 9 studies looking at postmenopausal women. The higher the estrogens, the higher the risk of breast cancer. Okay, so what do? Trimming body fat helps? Yes, this is true. Here's the lesson you can take. Go to the beach in August. And when you see the guys who are a little heavy set and they've taken their shirt off and they have a little bit of breast development, man boobs, you know what I'm talking about, right? If you go on the internet, they'll say man boobs came from soy. So ask him at the beach. I'd say, how much tofu did you have this week? And he'll say, what are you talking about? I'm a burger guy. I don't do that stuff. What has happened is as men gain weight, their fat cells convert their testosterone into estrogen, and it causes breast development. Okay? Same thing happens in women, that if they have more body fat, their body makes too much estrogen too. So trimming body fat is a good idea. If you have a higher body weight, your risk of cancer is higher. So the best way to lose weight, vegan diet, low in fat. Okay. All right, next, avoid dairy. That's a no-brainer by now. But let me just show you this. This was an Australian study that looked at, the green bar here is women who avoid dairy. They have healthier estrogen levels compared to the women who consume dairy. So skip it, you don't need it. Third, a low-fat, high-fiber diet, that's gonna tackle sex hormones. All right, so we've been talking about sex hormones, and I recently released a new book that's called Your Body in Balance, all about all the different hormones in our bodies. And if you don't mind, I want to just walk you through a couple more. None of this will be on the test, but in case any of you are thinking about this, I just want to walk you through it. This is your thyroid gland. It's sort of a butterfly-shaped organ in your neck, and its job is to give you energy. That's what it's for, okay? So if you're a Star Trek fan, remember Scotty? Scotty was in the engine room. His job, Captain Kirk would say, energy, give me, we need more power. And poor Scotty, sometimes he could deliver and sometimes he couldn't. That's your thyroid. If you need power, your thyroid is Scotty. So anyway, if you are hypothyroid, you're low in thyroid and you don't have energy. You feel weak, you feel fatigued, you're cold and constipated, you probably are going to gain some weight, and your mood goes bleh. You may not know you're hypothyroid. You just thought it was the rotten existential nature of life. In fact, your thyroid just isn't giving you the feel-good that you ought to have. So it's diagnosed with a series of blood tests, which are easy to do, and doctors know how to do this, and they will tell you that you're hypothyroid. So this is Mike. Mike is a neurosurgeon in North Carolina. And this was his situation. He was an active guy and very athletic, but he was hypothyroid. He was gaining a little bit of weight, his energy was down a little bit. And his doctor said, Mike, your blood tests aren't normal, but being a typical physician, he said, I'm just gonna not think about that for a while. So 5 years in a row, he was hypothyroid, getting worse and worse and worse. And his doctor just finally said, you really need to do something about this. So before I tell you what he did, let's go back to what causes the thyroid to not function so well. Well, the first thing is the lack of iodine. This is thyroid hormone. And thyroid hormone is what comes out of your thyroid gland. And those big purplish blobs on it, that's iodine. And iodine is really important for that, but there's not a lot of foods that have it. So it comes from the Greek, the word meaning purple. And for any of you who actually were awake during your high school chemistry class, iodine is the biggest of the halogens. There they are, starting with fluorine and chlorine and bromine and iodine. And these are the halogens. Remember them? Aren't they fun? The iodine is the really big one. It's the tinky winky of the halogens. So, you need about 150 micrograms a day, and you don't want to have too little and you don't want to have too much. But if you don't have it, you don't make thyroid hormone and you feel crummy. Worldwide, this is the biggest reason for it. So where is it? Well, it's in iodized salt. And in the 1920s, there was a lot of hypothyroidism in America. And so the Morton company said, well, people use salt, we'll stick iodine in the salt. You put a girl with an umbrella on the package, and everybody bought it, and hypothyroidism diminished dramatically in the United States. It's also in dairy products, and by the way, it doesn't come out of the cow. The cow's udder has been covered with manure and goo, and so that you spray it with an iodine disinfectant, and some of that gets into the, never mind. But the best source is sea vegetables, which people in Richmond don't traditionally consume. However, sea vegetables are great. You go with your friends to the sushi bar, don't have the fish sushi unless you're really well insured. But you can have the cucumber roll or the asparagus roll or the sweet potato roll. That nori wrapping has a lot of iodine in it. Or have the miso soup, the wakame, same thing. These are, for me and my Fargo, North Dakota tastes, these are all kind of new, but they're good. And it's good to bring these into your life. Best salad ever. You take a cucumber and just slice it really thin, and you soak some aramay. Wakame will work too. You just get these at the health food store. You mix them together with a little bit of seasoned vinegar and a little salt. The lightest, most delicious salad. Even I can make it. Be careful about kombu or kelp. Those are the seaweed salads. A little bit is okay, but they're really, really high in iodine. Be careful about hijiki. That's the kind of dark-looking one. Some of them have traces of arsenic. But stick with nori and wakame, and you're gonna be fine. Okay. But the biggest reason for hypothyroidism in Richmond is not a lack of iodine. That's number 2. The biggest reason is your body is somehow making antibodies to attack your own thyroid. It's an autoimmune reaction. So that's the main cause, and there are a variety of antibodies. Oops, there we go. There they are. A variety of antibodies that can slow the thyroid down. In some cases, they can speed it up. So researchers looked at people who had hypothyroidism and people who didn't. And what they found is that certain things were protective, seemed to keep you from getting thyroid problems. And those were vegetables and legumes. What are legumes? Beans, peas, foods that grow in a pod, right? Beans, peas, lentils, good, okay. Also, fruit and nuts and muesli for some reason. People who ate more of these, if you're eating muesli, you're not having the Canadian bacon, presumably. And the things that were harmful were animal fats in particular. Okay, so then the question is, does this actually affect whether your thyroid is going to go crazy or not? So researchers at the Adventist Health Study started looking at thyroid problems. Now, Adventists are health-conscious people, non-smokers, teetotalers, so scientists love looking at them because they vary in diet, but they're all pretty health-conscious. And the omnivores, here's the omnivores, we're using them for comparison. The vegans were less likely to develop hypothyroidism. But the ovo-lactose, people who consumed no meat, but they were having cheese and dairy, were more likely to be hypothyroid. What's that about? Because you're not having the meat, you're maybe doubling up on the grilled cheese and the cheese pizza and so forth. So they were doing worse. Okay, so back to Mike. Mike said, all right, forget your treatment. I'm going to try a plant-based diet. I'm going to eat like one of those vegans. And very rapidly, his TSH fell down to the normal range, meaning his thyroid gland was now normal. He lost 7 or 8 pounds, his energy got better, and he's fine. So he's not hypothyroid at all anymore. Okay, so our hypothesis is that animal products trigger an autoimmune reaction that attacks your thyroid. And if any of you know anybody who's got any kind of autoimmune reaction, I'm talking about an asthmatic child. Anybody here know anyone who's got maybe an asthmatic kid, or maybe you yourself have it? Run, do not walk to a completely dairy-free plant-based diet and see if this does not get better. Rheumatoid arthritis, Sjogren's disease, all of these are autoimmune reactions where dairy is the #1 suspect as the trigger for that reaction. Okay. So plant foods seem to be anti-inflammatory. They seem to be protective. So we talked about hypo, but what about hyper? This is where you got too much gas in the tank. Your thyroid is putting out more thyroid hormone, and you feel just the opposite. You're going to often have weight loss. You have a rapid pulse. You're just revved up, and you don't feel good. This is Wendy. Wendy was a film producer. She began to have reduced sleep. And she actually gained weight, which can sometimes happen with hyperthyroidism. But she felt very hyper, her mood swings were going crazy, and her doctor did blood tests, and she was clearly hyperthyroid. So back to the Adventist study. They looked not just at hypothyroidism, but hyper, and the same deal, except the vegans are the best. The omnivores now were the people in real trouble. So Wendy goes on a completely plant-based diet, and very rapidly the autoimmune attack stops, and she's what we call euthyroid, healthy. Now, these can be serious conditions, so this doesn't mean cancel your doctor's appointment. You know, it's good to continue to get monitored, but while you might be doing tests or taking medications, by all means do the most important thing, which is to put in your body the foods that allow healing to occur. Okay? So there's Tinky Winky. He says, have iodine and avoid animal-derived food. The butterfly on your neck does not eat butter. Butterflies are herbivores, so that's the way to eat. All right, the last thing that I want to spend just a couple minutes on is mood, if you don't mind. Now you might question, maybe vegans might have the worst mood of anybody? And the reason I say that is because every time you turn around, people ask you annoying questions. Once you're a vegan, you didn't ask to interact with people, but they say, where do you get your protein? Or I hate cholesterol, it doesn't matter anymore. Is there something about soy? What if I'm blood type O? You know these things. It's rough being a vegan, isn't it? So our research team at the Physicians Committee did a study with Geico, the car insurance company. They have 2,500 people in that building, and some of them have weight problems and diabetes, so we did a study with Geico to see how they would do. And the short answer is they did very well. We instituted vegan foods at work, and people lost weight. If they had diabetes, they got a lot better. But in the course of this, we actually tracked everybody's mood. And what we found is that their depression in the vegan group started to go away. That wasn't part of the study. We just happened to be tracking mood with very standardized questionnaires. We noticed that depression was going away. And then when we looked at anxiety, and anxiety was going away too. That's kind of curious. And so we started looking in the literature, and we found that others have found the same thing. This was a German study where they looked at the people who avoid red meat. And that's the purple line. Let me see, what am I telling you now? Oh, in this case, to read this, the people who have the best mood are the ones who are the highest. So in this case, the people avoiding red meat did the best, and same with anxiety. Okay, so then some other researchers started looking at Adventists and said, how are they doing with their mood? And I'm just going to skip through this because I don't want to drive you crazy. But to make it long story short, what they found is, sorry, this will drive you crazy if I go through all of these. But to make a long story short, what they found is that people following a vegan diet, even if they weren't doing that before, their mood often tends to lift a little bit. Now, part of that is because they're losing weight and they're healthier, and that's encouraging. But part of it is that you're getting the bad fat out of your blood so your brain can oxygenate better. And also, we have learned that in the same way as sore joints have an inflammatory process, inflammation can even affect the brain. And animal products are pro-inflammatory. You get them out, and the depression can improve. Now, this doesn't mean that it all goes away, but it does mean that if we eat healthy foods, we're more likely to do better. So, what we think is happening is reduced inflammation. The antioxidants in the plants help. The blood is less viscous, less thick. It can circulate better, and that helps. You don't have, do you know about casomorphins? Who knows about casomorphins? You don't know about this? Casomorphins are opiates in milk. Do you ever wonder why people are addicted to cheese? It smells like old socks. How can you get hooked on that stuff? It's because the protein in the milk breaks apart to release morphine-like chemicals called casomorphins. There's not a lot. You won't get arrested, but there's enough to make you want them. But these, over the long run, appear to be depressing. Okay, so the last thing, let me just say, skip that. The latest group who's now using this are athletes. You've heard about this. It started, I'm going to thank Scott Jurek, who I think really kind of started the current craze. Scott Jurek runs these huge ultra marathons, 100 miles at a stretch, 153 miles. He ran the entire Appalachian Trail, like amazing stuff, totally vegan. And he would say to you, I need to oxygenate my tissues, I can't be all inflamed. plant-based diet is what I got to fuel myself with. Do you know Rich Roll? Great guy, there's Rich. Same story, plant-based diet. And then Venus Williams developed Sjogren's disease, an autoimmune condition, so she went to a completely vegan diet. It cured her Sjogren's pretty much, it controlled it. She got her game back. So then, not to be outdone, this is Novak Djokovic, the #1 male tennis player. And he said, I'll do you one better. I'm going to open a vegan restaurant. So he's been vegan for years, and I mean, just great stuff. And then this is Derek Morgan from the Tennessee Titans. His wife Charity said, let me make you some vegan food. And he discovered that, kind of contrary to the football player's mindset, which is you need meat, he found that you don't want fat, you want muscle, not fat. And with vegan foods, he kept up his energy, but wasn't getting this excessive weight gain, and felt good. And so he started bringing food to the locker room. And pretty soon Charity found herself cooking for 15, 16 other guys on the team. And last year they had their best year in a long time. So anyway, there's Derek. This is Lewis Hamilton. For any Formula One race fans, Lewis last year just won his 6th world championship, and is very outspoken vegan advocate, has a vegan restaurant, and so forth, and I mean, nobody can touch him. Patrick Baboumian, the world's strongest man. Don't try this at home. My favorite one is Jonas Von Essen, who is the world memory champion. These are guys who will memorize a pack of cards in 30 seconds. It's amazing. When he won this for the memory championship for the first time, everyone said, how are you going to celebrate, Jonas? And he said, well, I don't know. Is there a vegan restaurant around here I can go to? If the brain is filled with Velveeta fat, you just can't oxygenate the brain very well. So along these same lines, Albert Einstein had a pretty good brain. And later in life, he wrote these words. It's my view that the vegetarian manner of living, by its purely physical effect on the human temperament, would most beneficially influence the lot of mankind. So I am living without fats, without meat, without fish. But I'm feeling quite well this way. And it always seems to me that man was not born to be a carnivore. And look what it did for him. So, the last thing that I just want to say is I want to thank the organizers for pulling this together, and I want to thank all of you for coming. However, the people who need this message the most aren't in this room. Frankly, the people who need this message the most are 12 years old, and they're in school, and they think it's perfectly normal to eat chicken nuggets and pizza. And then on the way home, they think it's perfectly normal to stop at the 7-Eleven and get string cheese. And then when they get home, their parents put another pizza in the oven, and the kids turn on the TV, and half the commercials are snack foods. And the other half of the commercials are medications to undo the effects of the snack foods. And they think it's totally normal to get diabetes. In fact, it looks kind of fun on the TV. And they think that you get a heart attack because you're old. Alzheimer's disease is a predictable part of life. These things just happen. And if you get cramps, that's your curse. If you're infertile, God didn't want you to have kids. Wait. Food is not perfect, but let's get the food dialed in and see what we can do. But we cannot do any of that if people don't have this message. Luckily, we have the ability to get the word out in a huge way. If you are on the internet, if you're using social media, you have the capacity to influence everybody around you, and they in turn influence other people. So we can get this word out really, really well. And we do have some things that I wanted to share with you that you can take advantage of if you'd like. This is our 21-day vegan challenge kickstart. It's on your iPhone or on your Android. It's a free download in English or Spanish. So it's the 21-day vegan kickstart. You just download it for nothing. And please just share that link far and wide. It's got videos and menus and recipes, and it's really fun. And it's cool, and it's updated all the time. Secondly, if you know anybody who's a medical student, doctor, nurse, dietitian, or you can do this too, the Nutrition Guide for Clinicians has everything that you didn't learn in medical school about food and health. And it's a free download as well, with no commercial sponsorship. We have for doctors in practice and also nurses and dietitians and pharmacists and physician assistants, the Nutrition CME is all free. There's no commercial sponsorship. We have hours and hours and hours of classes that they can take, approved by the American Medical Association for their continuing medical education credits. And if anybody here is a clinician and would like to come to DC in August when we are at our most sweltering, we would love to have you for the International Conference on Nutrition and Medicine, 3 days, 20 hours of CME. It'll really completely change your life. This is my new book. I called it Your Body in Balance because we may need other kinds of treatment or whatever, but if we get our body in balance with healthy foods, maybe we won't need other things quite so much. So whether we're talking about issues that are bothersome, like cramps, endometriosis, infertility, or things that can affect life or death, like breast cancer or prostate cancer or ovarian cancer, the number one thing to get on our side is food. You with me? Can we get that message out? Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Before y'all go, I want to encourage you to check out Dr. Barnard's new book, Your Body in Balance. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel, hit that notification bell, and if you want to see more Dr. Barnard, check out this exclusive interview I was able to get with him before and after this presentation by clicking on the thumbnail that pops up right now. Alright, y'all know what time it is. Red Pill Vegan. Next.